Hey there, folks. Uncle Daniel here. Now, if you've got a tree in your yard that just won't grow, a bush that looks half dead every single summer, or a little apple tree that gives you 3 sad apples a year and then acts like it did you a favor, pull up a chair because today we're going to fix all of that. I spent the last couple of weeks crawling through the strangest corners of the internet. American gardening forums, old Reddit threads, message boards, where folks have been arguing about dirt since before some of you were born. And I pulled out the wildest, weirdest, and honestly, the most effective tricks people swear by for getting trees and bushes to grow like they're being paid to. Some of these sound completely crazy. A few of them are pure folklore that people repeat because their grandmother did it. And a handful of them are backed by real science and will genuinely change the way your garden grows. I'll tell you which is which, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm your uncle, not a salesman. So let's get into it. Let's start with the one that every single forum brings up sooner or later. Banana peels. Now, if you've spent any time online looking at gardening tips, somebody has told you to bury banana peels next to your plants. And here's the thing, there's real truth behind it. Banana peels are loaded with potassium, and they've got a good dose of phosphorus too. Potassium is the nutrient that helps your plants flower and fruit. It strengthens the whole root system. So for a fruit tree or a flowering shrub, that's exactly the kind of food they're hungry for. The old-timers on these forums will tell you to just dig a little trench near the base of the plant, drop your peels in, cover them up, and let the earthworms and the microbes do the rest. Over a few weeks, that peel breaks down and feeds the soil right where the roots can reach it. Now, here's where I've got to be honest with you, because the internet loves to exaggerate. A banana peel is not a miracle. It's mostly water, and the amount of potassium in one peel is small. It smells about as bad as you'd imagine, and honestly, burying the whole peel gives your soil more. Because the good stuff is in the peel itself, not just what soaks out into the water. So bury them, don't brew them, and don't expect fireworks. Expect a slow, steady little boost. That's still worth doing. Now let's talk about the big one, the one that starts more arguments on gardening forums than politics does at Thanksgiving. Epsom salt.e. If you read these boards, half the people treat Epsom salt like it's holy water for plants, and the other half will tell you it's snake oil. So who's right? Well, both, kind of. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is a real nutrient that plants need. It's actually sitting right in the center of every chlorophyll molecule, which is the green stuff that lets a plant turn sunlight into food. So, if your soil is genuinely short on magnesium, and you've got a tree with yellowing leaves where the veins stay green, a little Epsom salt dissolved in water can green those leaves right back up. That part is real. Folks with rose bushes and evergreens and tomato plants swear by it, and when there's an actual magnesium deficiency, they're not wrong. But here's the catch, and this is where the internet leads people astray. If your soil already has enough magnesium, and a lot of soil does, then dumping Epsom salt on it does absolutely nothing good. It won't make a healthy tree grow faster. It won't stop every disease. And if you really overdo it, you can actually throw your soil chemistry out of balance and cause more harm than good. So my advice from your Uncle Daniel: Epsom salt is a medicine, not a vitamin. You use medicine when there's a problem. You don't take it every day just because. If your leaves are yellowing between green veins, give it a try. About a tablespoon dissolved in a gallon of water, watered around the base. Otherwise, save your money. All right, now here's one that sounds like something out of a witch's cookbook, but people on these forums absolutely swear by it. And there's some real science tucked inside. The milk and molasses spray. I know. Milk and molasses on your plants. Stay with me. Here's the recipe the old organic gardeners pass around. The milk actually works as a mild fungicide. It's been shown to help fight off certain fungal diseases like powdery mildew, that white dusty stuff you see on leaves. And the molasses is basically candy for the tiny living things in your soil. It feeds the beneficial microbes and bacteria, and those little critters explode in population and go to work breaking down nutrients and making them available to your plant's roots. Healthy soil is living soil, and this mixture throws a feast for the life underground. Folks who use it talk about bigger fruit, better flavor, and more flowers. Now, is it going to turn your tomato into a pumpkin overnight? No, but feeding your soil biology is one of the most underrated things you can do, and this old recipe does exactly that for pennies. And that brings me right into the next legend of the gardening forums, compost tea. Now, this is one where the old-timers and the science folks actually shake hands and agree. Compost tea is exactly what it sounds like. You brew your compost like a giant cup of tea, and you feed the liquid to your plants. The simple version is, you take a shovelful of good finished compost, wrap it up in an old pillowcase or a burlap sack like a giant tea bag, and let it steep in a bucket of water for a day or two. The fancy version, the one the serious folks online rave about, is called aerated compost tea, and for that you drop an aquarium air pump into the bucket to bubble oxygen through it while it brews. That oxygen lets the beneficial microbes multiply like crazy, and after a day you've got a bucket full of living, biologically active liquid gold. You pour it around the base of your trees and shrubs, or you strain it and spray it on the leaves. What you're doing is inoculating your plant and your soil with billions of good microorganisms that help the roots absorb nutrients and crowd out the bad guys that cause disease. People online swear their gardens went from struggling to jungle-sized after they started using compost tea. Just remember to use it fresh, within a few hours of brewing, because all those good microbes need to go into the soil while they're still alive and hungry. Now, let's talk about a kitchen scrap you're probably throwing in the trash right now, and shouldn't be: eggshells. Every gardening forum has that one person insisting eggshells are the answer to everything. And here's the truth of it. Eggshells are almost pure calcium carbonate, and calcium is what plants use to build strong cell walls. It's the nutrient that prevents that ugly black rot on the bottom of your tomatoes and peppers. Blossom end rot, they call it. But here's the trick that most people get wrong, and this is where the internet leads you astray again. You can't just toss a cracked eggshell in the dirt and expect magic. A whole eggshell takes years, and I mean years, to break down. The secret is you've got to dry them out, and then grind them into a fine powder. A coffee grinder works great, and mix that powder into your soil. The finer the powder, the faster your plants can actually use that calcium. Whole shells are basically just decoration. Powdered shells are plant food. So don't let anybody tell you eggshells don't work. They just don't work the way most people use them. Speaking of kitchen scraps, let's clear up one of the biggest myths on the whole internet, because I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't. Coffee grounds. You have heard, I guarantee it, that you should dump your used coffee grounds around your acid-loving plants like blueberries and azaleas because coffee is acidic. Well, here's the thing your Uncle Danniel found digging through the actual research. Used coffee grounds, the ones left over after you've brewed your cup, are pretty close to neutral. What coffee grounds are good for is adding organic matter and a little slow-release nitrogen when you mix them into your compost pile. Sprinkle them in there. Let them break down with everything else, and they're a fine addition. But please, don't pile a thick, wet layer of coffee grounds right on top of your soil. It can actually cake up and form a crust that repels water and does more harm than good. Compost them. Don't carpet with them. That's the move. Now here's one that people fight about constantly online, and I want to give it to you straight. Aspirin for plants. Yep, the same little white pill in your medicine cabinet. The theory floating around the forums is that aspirin contains something called salicylic acid, and plants naturally produce a similar compound when they're under attack from disease. It's part of their immune response. So the idea is, if you spray a little dissolved aspirin water on your plants, you kind of wake up their defenses ahead of time, like a vaccine. And I'll tell you, there is some genuine research out there where scientists use salicylic acid type compounds to prime plant defenses, and it showed promise in the lab. But, and this is a big but, when the extension offices, the real university plant experts, looked into folks dropping aspirin in their houseplant soil, they found very little evidence it does much good in the average garden. And they're not too keen on it. So here's my honest uncle verdict. This one is more science experiment than proven miracle. If you're curious, the folks who try it dissolve a regular aspirin in a gallon of water and use it as an occasional foliar spray. It probably won't hurt in small amounts. But don't bet your harvest on it. And don't go dumping pills in your garden where a curious dog might find them. All right, let's shift gears to watering, because how you water your trees and shrubs matters more than almost anything else, and the forums are full of clever tricks for it. The first one is an old idea that's thousands of years old, and still genius. It's called an olla. That's L-A, sometimes spelled O-L-A. It's just an unglazed clay pot terracotta that you bury in the ground right up to its neck near your plant, and you fill it with water and put a little cap on top. Because the clay is porous and unglazed, the water slowly seeps out through the sides, directly into the soil, right down where the roots are. The plant literally drinks at its own pace, and you're not losing water to evaporation off the surface. For a young tree or a thirsty shrub in the heat of summer, this is a game changer. You fill it every few days, and the plant stays perfectly, deeply watered without you standing there with a hose. And that's the real secret with trees and bushes that nobody wants to hear. So let me be the uncle that tells you, water deep and water less often. So many people kill their trees with kindness, a little splash of water every single day. All that does is keep the moisture up near the surface, so the roots stay shallow and lazy, hugging the top of the soil where they dry out fast and blow over in a storm. Instead, you want to give your tree a long, slow, deep soak once or twice a week. Let that water sink way down. The roots will chase it downward, and you'll end up with a deep, strong, drought-proof root system that can take care of itself. Deep and infrequent beats, shallow and daily, every time, and put a nice layer of mulch, wood chips, bark, straw around the base, but keep it a few inches back from the trunk itself so you don't rot the bark. That mulch holds the moisture in, keeps the roots cool, and slowly feeds the soil as it breaks down. A tree with good mulch is a happy tree. Now here's a clever one for the folks in colder spots or anybody trying to grow something that loves heat. The reflection trick. The foreign gardeners figured out that if you plant a heat lover near a light-colored wall, a fence, or you set up something shiny nearby, that surface bounces sunlight and warmth back onto the plant and creates a cozy little warm pocket, a microclimate, the fancy folks call it. A brick wall soaks up the sun all day and radiates that heat back out in the evening, keeping your plant warmer through a chilly night. So if you've got a fig or a grapevine or a tender little fruit tree that always seems to struggle, tuck it up against a south-facing wall and watch it perk right up. You're basically giving it its own private little heater. Here's another one that'll save you money, reusing your cooking water. When you boil vegetables or pasta or eggs, that water pulls out little bits of nutrients, starch, calcium, some minerals. Instead of pouring it down the drain, let it cool all the way down and pour it on your garden. It's a free, gentle little feeding. Now the one rule, and it's an important one, no salt. If you salted that pasta water, it's no good for your plants because salt in the soil is bad news. So only the unsalted stuff. Cool it, pour it, and you've turned your kitchen waste into free plant food. Now let me spend a few minutes on the real gold, the old-fashioned tricks from our grandparents' generation that keep showing up on these forums because they just plain work, and no store can sell them to you. First one, planting tiny seeds. If you've ever tried to plant carrot seeds or anything itty-bitty, you know they're impossible to see, and you end up dumping 100 in one spot. The old trick is to mix your tiny seeds with some cornmeal before you sow them. The white cornmeal spreads the seeds out evenly and shows up bright against the dark soil so you can see exactly where they landed. Simple, brilliant, costs nothing. Here's another grandparent classic, the slug problem. Every garden's got them, those slimy little devils that chew holes in everything overnight. You don't need poison. You take a shallow dish, sink it into the soil so the rim's at ground level, and you fill it with a little cheap beer. The slugs can't resist it. They crawl in for the party, and well, that's the end of the slugs. It sounds like a joke, but generations of gardeners swear by the old beer trap, and it flat out works. Same spirit, hang some old aluminum pie plates from string near your trees and bushes. When the wind catches them, they flash light and clatter around, and that spooks the birds and deer that want to eat your fruit and buds. Free scarecrow, basically. And here's a tidy little trick for your kitchen scraps that beats a whole compost pile if you don't have room. Trench composting. Instead of building a big compost bin, you just dig a shallow trench right in an empty spot in your garden bed. Dump your vegetable peels and coffee grounds and eggshells right in and cover them back up with soil. They rot down right there in the ground, and the nutrients feed whatever you plant in that spot next season. It's composting with zero equipment and zero smell, because it's all buried. The worms find it and throw a party, and your soil gets richer every time. A couple more from the old-timers. Save your old pantyhose or nylon stockings, cut them into strips, and use them to tie your young trees to a stake or tie up your tomato vines. The nylon is soft and stretchy, so it holds the plant up without cutting into the bark the way wire or rough twine does. It gives as the trunk grows. And here's one for your tools. Keep a bucket of sand with a little mineral oil mixed into it, and after you use your shovel or your pruners, just plunge them into the sand a few times before you put them away. The sand scrubs off the dirt, and the oil coats the metal, so your tools never rust and stay sharp for years. My own grandfather had a bucket like that by the shed door his whole life, and I've got one now too. Let me give you one more powerful old trick before we start wrapping up. Wood ash. If you burn real wood in a fireplace or a fire pit, don't throw that ash away. Wood ash is full of potassium, and it raises the pH of your soil, which means it makes acidic soil more neutral. Now you've got to be careful here, because this is a case where more is definitely not better. A light dusting worked into the soil around fruit trees and around things like lilacs that like a sweeter, less acidic soil can give them a real boost. But if you dump too much or you put it around acid-loving plants like blueberries, you'll do real damage. So use it like seasoning, a little sprinkle worked in, not a whole bucket. Test your soil if you can. Used right, that fireplace ash is free fertilizer and free lime all in one. And the last big idea I want to leave you with is the oldest and wisest one of all, companion planting. The forums are full of it, and the grandparents knew it by heart. The idea is that certain plants help each other out when they grow side by side.